Hey guys, welcome back to another video. You may have just heard Ahsan putting his phone on Do Not Disturb. It's very conscientious guesting here from the 9320 head honcho. Good morning, my friend. How are you doing today? You alright?
Morning, Steve. I am really good. How are you?
You look cozy, mate. Looks like a really
I'm cozy. I
yeah.
was going to say it's chilly, but
It's not.
really it isn't chilly at all. It's
You're
like
lying.
19 degrees outside. So
Ahsan lived in Ibiza, if you don't know, over in Ibiza, and we're all here freezing our asses off. Like literally, I can't actually see out my skylights in the attic for once because it's covered in snow, and it's been a frosty morning as well in the world of Manchester City Football Club online. City have been a lot of people have been throwing mud and probably some snowballs at City as well, haven't they, over the past 24 hours? We got loads to talk about today.
About City?
I know. What about City?
What about City?
Do you know what? Last night I considered replying to all these things, just like every tweet about it, just going like, has anyone thought, maybe they should follow the rules? Like, I just, consider trolling, but then I thought, I can't be bothered. I cannot be bothered just dealing with hundreds of replies of people not getting the very obvious irony and everything I'm talking about. Guys, what I'll also say, by the way, please go and check out 9320 if you haven't already. It's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful podcast. There will be a link in the pinned comment, which I'm about to paste in there right now. Of course, Ahsan, the head honcho over there. You've got Stefan, who is the financial fair play expert, the litigation expert, and also he knows his football too. And he's currently destroying everyone over on Twitter, talking about FFP and all the other stuff and all the other acronyms and so on. And of course, you got Lloyd, you got Howard, you got Steve Tudor, you got so many people over there. Go check it out. Put a link in the comments. It's wonderful for for a few quid a month. Or you can even DM Ahsan and chat about that kind of stuff. You can get a wonderful podcast from loads of very passionate, lifelong, and very knowledgeable Blues. The thing is, I can always admit that I have knowledge gaps in my support of football, and I think that's totally fine and normal to. Like, I don't know much about the finance side of it. I'm not good at that side of it. But you guys have got it covered from every angle, haven't you? I like to think.
Well, there's just a lot. There's a lot of us. I mean,
Yeah.
The more contributors you have, the more points of view you have, and also, you feel as though you can cover most topics pretty well. And I feel like we do that at 9320 very well, if I'm honest. Like, I don't think.
Yeah.
There's loads of great City content out there. I think we're lucky that, in general, that the kind of City supporter media space is really, really strong.
I agree.
But within that, I think what we do is pretty unique in terms of just the scale and the scope of the content that we do. I think we put it out there the other week. We did 263 podcasts last year or something like that, which is just an insane amount of content to be putting out there.
Yeah.
And it's not just City. We do touch upon the Premier League and loads of stuff. So, yeah, if you've not checked it out, you can go to our SoundCloud. There's clips of the premium content on there, and there's also free shows on there as well, which will give you an idea of what we do.
Yeah, I honestly believe. I think Ahsan's right, by the way. I think the City community have got really good content creators. I don't think there's a lot of very informed and measured takes, and I think I think there's honestly a bit of an anomaly when I look around and see what a lot of the red shirt side have to offer. There's some good ones, but a lot of bad ones, and I think in general we're pretty lucky that way. But I pinned the top comment anyway, where you can go check out 9320. It really is. It's sort of a place if you want to be informed, but reasonably as well, because right now, for example, FFP is the talk of everyone. Like, Stefan is involved in that. Stefan is no bullshit kind of guy, isn't he, Stefan? When it comes to all this kind of stuff, he knows his stuff because of his background, and it's essential listens. There's loads over there, so go check it out, guys. Anyway, and where's your head been in the past 24 hours of all this stuff? Of course, what about City and so on? I was saying to Ahsan, I've not had a chance to follow it in more detail myself because I've been doing so much personal stuff. But where's your head with it all? With the narrative around City.
I find it all quite weird, just insofar as I think from the point of view of the league and the rules themselves, I mean, that's FFP in action in the sense that, or profit and sustainability rules. That's that stuff in action. It basically stops owners from putting money into their clubs and buying footballers. Yeah. Now, there's always been a kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like a kind of holistic side to that, where people basically are saying, well, it stops clubs from getting into debt, and it ensures that spending is sustainable. But that's not really what the Premier League was built on. No. We forget that the sort of dominance of the league was built on our free market financial power, right? And to me, I don't really understand what the league want to achieve by applying sporting sanctions to this sort of stuff. This is an accounting thing. This is a money thing. It's got nothing to do with, the idea that I've seen. It's funny how, I've seen, for example, I've seen a lot of Liverpool supporters go, well, Everton cheated, so they should have the book thrown at them. And it's like the league have opened themselves up to a situation where any club sent to the independent commission, everybody can go, well, they cheated. And that as a sort of year upon year narrative around your league is just not healthy. Like the Premier League is literally eating itself right now. It's shooting itself in the foot over and over
as well.
again.
Look at the reputation. You think of Italy and all the corruption scandals.
Exactly.
And it does affect the standing, and people don't take it as seriously. And look, I think the Premier League has obviously an incredibly good thing going generally. It's the biggest league in the world for a reason. But look, we only have to look at Man United as they are the perfect example of what places can get you. And in terms of if you presume it'll always be the case, someone's going to take over at some point unless you manage the reputation of that league carefully. There's always money elsewhere. There's always money, and you never know what could happen. It sounds crazy to think people would have laughed at you if you said, you'd have Ballon d'Or winners playing in Saudi Arabia 2 years ago, and look how quickly things changed. And I'm not saying Saudi Arabia is going to get massive or whatever, but what I'm saying is the Premier League is not as comfortable as it thinks it is. Nothing in sport is sacred. Nothing in sport, it could be a Super League. The Premier League could suddenly struggle. There's many. I don't know what could happen, but I guess the point I'm making is that the Premier League do have to manage the reputation. You're absolutely right, because things can change just like that, and
it weakens their negotiating position for TV rights deals. The reality is that if you put together the City case, what's happening with Everton, what's happening with Forest, the potential that next year it happens to Chelsea. Well, your league lacks legitimacy.
Well. Let's be honest.
Yeah, the league lacks legitimacy. If we get to the end of this season and because of the appeals that are happening, we don't know who's been relegated, well, then it's not really. If I'm a fella, a media company in Europe, and I'm negotiating rights with you, I'm going, you don't feel as strong anymore. Your product doesn't feel as appealing because there's loads of asterisks flying around, and I feel as though what the league have done is they've walked into the narratives that were built up by Javier Tebas and La Liga and some of the other European commentators who were basically like, the Premier League, we can't compete with the Premier League. We can't compete with state-owned clubs. Somebody needs to control their spending. All of this stuff is stuff that people on the continent have been crying about for years. And what the league are doing is they're walking right into that, and they're doing it at the behest of United, Liverpool, and Arsenal. Don't be under any illusions, right? That the rest of the turkeys that voted for Christmas, they voted for Christmas because it was politics, and nobody thought they'd be at the shitty end of that stick. So when United and Liverpool and Arsenal are ringing around and doing their lobbying and saying to all the other chief execs,
happen. People are so naive to think it
doesn't. Of course it happens.
Do
you not remember? Do you not remember when after the UEFA charges dropped for when was that, like 2020, I think it was, whenever those UEFA charges dropped, The Athletic did a really big piece on the Premier League board meeting that happened the following month, right? And they took great pleasure in describing Soriano as a pariah at that meeting.
Yeah,
so effectively going, nobody likes City, nobody likes Soriano, City are isolated, the league are unified in the idea that City have cheated and something needs to be done about it. And it's like, all of those people, right, that got behind the Scousers, the Rags and the Gooners 3 years ago, they're all on some level going to pay the price for supporting those three clubs and supporting this kind of legislation. Because in a way, right, City is so big, we can't fail. I'm not worried about City. So my thing is just very simply, like, you can have whatever rules that you want, but you can't put yourself in a position where every season you're docking points off people because of the amount of money that they spend.
Yeah.
No, that's not. And on top of that, to go, we're not even going to decide ourselves what the sporting sanctions are. We'll ask 3 barristers who have got nothing to do with football, who make up an independent commission. We're going to let them decide how many points get docked based on how much money the owners have spent. It's nonsense. Really, in my opinion, it's nonsense.
It feels like as well. Because obviously, when everything was pointed at Man City, everyone was totally fine with everything going on. No one asked questions because everyone hated Man City. But it does feel like the past few months since the Everton thing, and now we're seeing, of course, coming out about Newcastle as well. And you've got to look around the Premier League. There's some very rich owners in there. I was just doing a little bit of research this morning. You've got like Villa's owners, like got the 5th biggest combined wealth, ahead of Liverpool and all that kind of stuff. They've got a lot of rich clubs there, basically, potentially. And I do wonder I want to know where this unfolds and what the end game is here, because it felt like when it was just City, everyone was happy, but now you've got Everton fans complaining, you've got Newcastle fans complaining. Forest fans will start to kick off about the rules as well, even if some of it, if it is Turkey's vote for Christmas and so on. The point is, it's coming from many angles now, and we all know the sort of power of sort of relative client journalism. We know that clubs have their own writers, so to speak, and they will protect their club. I always think of the Brighton fellow, the biggest example of that, the most blatant one, but
Andy Naylor.
Yeah, he's the biggest example of the most blatant. But the more it happens to clubs, the more these writers for The Athletic, for whatever, start to lobby with their friends, they start to write articles defending their team, the more tribalism starts to embed itself. It doesn't become a Man City issue anymore. It becomes a many club issue. I just cannot see how this current system survives, because, as you said, you can't have a situation where most of the league's fans and journalists and media are just disappointed and angry and constantly complaining about cheating and tribalism. It's essentially civil war, isn't it? It's civil war.
Yeah, it undermines every facet of the league, and there's so much so much of it is like, kind of can be framed as the law of unintended consequences, where it's pretty clear they've not thought this through properly, right? Because, for example, Everton saying, so the way the rules work, sorry, we're going down a rabbit hole here, but I just find
we'll go to football in a minute. Right? We'll go for it,
yeah. So the way the rules work is that it's a rolling 3-year assessment. So what happens is you get assessed over 3 years. But the problem with that, which is the point that Everton are making last night, is, hang on, you've docked us 10 points for the 3-year period from 2019 to 2022, right? You've docked us 10 points for that. And now what you're saying is that 2020 to 2023, which incorporates 2 years that we've already been punished for, because of the rolling 3-year thing,
and it'll be the same year after that, and it'll be the same year after
exactly,
because they can't possibly rectify those mistakes that quickly, can they?
No, and I keep seeing this stuff about how, like, oh well, they should have known that they were going to fall foul of the rules. Well, yeah, but I'm fairly sure that when these rules came into place, the league said very clearly, listen, if you breach these rules. The independent commission, we're going to tell them to take points off you.
But they didn't know, did they?
They didn't say that. They didn't say that. They said, we're going to let the independent commission decide whether it's a financial sanction or a sporting sanction. So you're kind of kidding the stakeholders, because you're telling them, well, it's possible that we're going to fine you for spending more than we think you should be allowed to spend. But then when it actually happens for the first time, they go after points. And it's like, oh, now everybody's like, oh, shit, what do we do? How is this going to work? How is this going to play out?
We've just scratched the surface of it. It's going to absolutely, it's going to unravel and
it's going to run and run. Yeah,
it really is. And I mean, if you're like me and you don't have a massive interest in this stuff, I'm not in a kind of patronising way. It's more the fact that my football to me has always been football. It's just a hobby. I love football, and I feel like it's a bit of a shame that it's all tied into it. And a lot of people don't have the energy for it, and I get that, because I feel the same. Like, I just want to talk about Kevin De Bruyne being brilliant because it's just who I am. But we can't shake it. But if you are like me and you generally don't have an interest in it, just do what I do. Anytime anyone replies to you 115, just block them. That's the first thing I do because I can't be bothered. It was, honestly, this immediate block. If anyone doesn't know me replies to something so childish, just 115, I just block them straight away. And I tell you, it makes your life a bit easier online because those people aren't serious people. They're just people looking. They're just bad faith trolling. Ahsan, let's talk about football a little bit for those who expected to see some Kevin De Bruyne hype given the thumbnail of this video. I've not spoken to you, of course, since the weekend, and I know obviously. It's been a few days now since, but I think I did the BBC Manchester podcast yesterday, and I rolled in on Monday morning, and I was still bouncing. I was still absolutely buzzing because that game to me felt cathartic. There was something about that game of football and the way it happened, and I think every now and then you have a game of football, even if it's just start of January, that feels like a big moment, and the return of KDB and the fact that the way the goal happened at the end. Honestly. I was going to say that's the most I've enjoyed a game of football in ages, but it was in 6 months, since July. But that was that game felt big. Where was your head after it?
Yeah, massive. I think more than obviously you want the 3 points and you want the win, but I think in a weird way, the fact that it's a last minute winner. The fact that we're losing 2-1 and Kev comes on and he scores the goal that he scores. I think an interesting way to look at these things, it's always good to go and have a look at what your rivals are saying after something like that, right? And the head loss in Liverpool, for example, is incredible. Like, heads went right across Liverpool as soon as Oscar Bobb scores that goal. Yeah. And I think that tells you everything you need to know, because I think that there's that slow realization that they played more than half this season without Kevin De Bruyne, and we still don't have a lead. And now Kevin De Bruyne is back, and City look like they're about to find some real form. So it's like the 3 points are just 3 points, and they're important. But I think the psychological aspect is even bigger. The fact that they didn't play this weekend, so they now have to think for a week about the fact that City have got the same amount of points as us and have played the same amount of games. Is that right?
There's 2 points, right, 2 points behind. We're still 2 points behind Liverpool, but
sorry,
yeah,
2
but
points
it's
behind.
close. Yeah. It's close is the point, and I do think the narrative. It's rare to look online and see the narratives kind of so universally shift, because like Kevin. I mean, basically, as the result, Kevin De Bruyne returning, all that's happened over the past few days is debates whether he's the greatest of all time, and that is quite a remarkable return. This is his first Premier League game in 5 months, and as a result of that half an hour cameo, people are just discussing if he's the greatest to ever do it in the Premier League. That is what you call a return, isn't it? That you could not have a bigger impact on the narrative than that, and that is, I do believe in the power of fear an awful lot of football. Like, I do believe reputations kill teams. They really do. Like, I think Klopp said it, didn't he? Kevin De Bruyne is warming up and the Premier League is shaking. And he sort of led it into that himself, didn't he, Klopp, there as well with that quote? But it felt stupidly significant, that return to me. And he looked good. He looked really good.
Do you think that's why it felt significant, because of how good he looked?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of us. I mean, I was expecting to be a little bit slower to return. I think most of us probably were as well, because he has been in the past. I know he has been, but I do wonder if the nature of this injury and the nature of his time out, he seems different in his head, and he said that himself, hasn't he? Like, I was chatting to Natalie Pike yesterday, who did an interview with KDB for City, and when she asked him, like, what have you got left to achieve? He said, deadpan response to it, I just want to be the best in the world. And that's what he wants to be. And I think he means that, I think he looks at himself and thinks, I want to win a Ballon d'Or. I think he wants to. And to me, a KDB who has already written his story is complete. KDB could have retired 5 months ago when he got that injury, and he would be one of the all-time greats still. But he's coming back just to add more chapters to his story. And to me, that is a really, really, really terrifying prospect for everyone else, because he's playing without fear, because we won the treble, we won the Champions League. His career's done, essentially. Not done, but you know what I mean by that. He doesn't have to win anything else, really.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I felt that was a real big moment, and Oscar Bobb, by the way, as well. I've got my theory about the bench categories. Every time I look at the bench, don't know if you do the same. I look at these 3 categories for me on the bench. There's the ones that will never get on, unless we're winning 4-0. Sergio Gomez, Calvin Phillips, the youth players. There's ones that might get on if we do not, you might get on. Nunes, people like that, and he's the ones who definitely will get on. If someone Grealish or Doku's on the bench, they're probably going to get on. That kind of categories. Oscar Bobb was at the bottom of that category at the start of the season. He's now touching the first category there, where you look at the bench, you think he's going to get on, isn't he?
Football's about. I think football sometimes, particularly for young players, it's about moments, about when you get given an opportunity. How do you take the opportunity that's presented to you? And I think that there is an element of luck involved. I think that if Grealish doesn't get ill and doesn't have to miss 4 or 5 days training, he's the next sub. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if he's not the next sub, then he starts, and Doku is the next sub.
Yeah.
But because Doku's coming back from an injury, because Grealish is really not fit, the opportunity opens up for Bobb. And then after that, I think for me, the big thing is, and you can't underestimate this, is what Oscar Bobb did. If he does that in an EDS game, everybody goes, that's why he's going to play for the first team. But when you get to the first team, when your team are drawing in injury time at one of the most difficult grounds in the country to go to,
it's ridiculous
in the world, nobody expects you to do that. You're not expected to do that because you're too young. Because that takes a level of coldness that it's really, really hard to have when you're not a first team player. Oscar Bobb's not. I mean, most first team players in that situation are going to have a little bit of a panic because they know what is
There's probably
at stake.
A couple in the City's first team who can do that. I mean, I genuinely believe that in that moment with that composure, because it's not it's almost about a unique ability. That is that.
Bobb and Foden are the only two players who can do that.
I absolutely agree.
And Bernardo,
maybe Kev would do something genius probably, but you're talking about a very small group of players in that team. Like we all know players that we've loved in a City shirt that we just couldn't do that in that moment, because I don't think you can teach that. I don't think that's an age thing. I think that's just an individual brilliance thing, and the fact that, as you said, he can do that at that age with that little experience, that to me says one thing: that's just who he is, and that is once again that is It's thrilling, isn't it? Because you've got a young player there who could just win you the biggest of games at the moment. It was a massive game. It was absolutely a huge game. It felt like a cup final for the last 20 minutes. If you can do that, then without experience, what is his ceiling? The potential is frightening, isn't it?
I think the challenge is going to be what is his position in the kind of current. Because the good thing is that we have a really small squad. And because we always carry a small squad, there's always a chance, there's always an opportunity. And I think that I sort of look at Bobb and I hope that what they do is they go, all right, you know what? For the next 2 years, right wing, more or less, is where we're going to let you develop. That we're not going to move you around too much. We're not going to buy 2 lads to play on the right wing. The right wing is going to be your domain and one other player's domain in the squad, and you kind of fight it out. And I think that in the end, it comes back to this idea that there's the talent, but then there's the luck. There's how do you take the opportunity that's presented to you, and he had already grasped the opportunity by staying last summer, by being committed, obviously being really good in training, obviously having the right mentality, having the right attitude. And then in the first half of the season, every time he's been given an opportunity, he's made an impact where it's not just he passes the eye test, but he actually makes an impact. Yeah. Like he won us 2 points on Sunday, and nobody would be surprised if I said at the end of the season, the league's won by a couple of points. In the end, it ends up being that tight. Nobody's going to go, well, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's entirely possible because it's happened loads of times. So I think that when you, as a player at that age, make an impact like that, a real impact, I think that's when the coaching staff and the management, everybody goes, well, I trust him. If I'm losing and he's playing shit, he's off and you're going on because I trust you, because you've done it before and you've done it in the biggest pressure moment away from home. I can't overestimate how, that's just not
to bounce off that.
You're not
Pep did say, by the way, the one thing that made Oscar Bobb sort of part of the team is that the players trusted him. They train with a player apparently, and they go, yeah. They essentially sort of give him the nod as if you can be part of the first team now, and he impressed him straight away. And that's once again it's down to ability, attitude, all these things. And the thing that I'm quite excited for now is, do you know when you see like a young player, or even any player, do you know when they get the goal in a game, suddenly the confidence levels just shoot up and they become electric? Oscar Bobb's just had his big moment, and we've not even seen what happens after that yet. And what I mean by that is, like, I still think, even though he's had like sort of big moments, there's still been a slight element of teacher's pet in a good way, where you can tell he's been keeping the ball, and it's a couple of times where I thought you pass there instead of shooting, because what young players do every now and then, a little bit like what Phil did when he was younger as well, where you can tell he's doing what Pep wants him to do, and not fully playing his game because he was only young. I think Oscar Bobb has been great, but there's been still a tiny bit of that. Not that I'm complaining, it's the right thing to do. But basically, the point I'm getting at is now I feel like this will give him the confidence to. I expect him to be even better. I know that sounds like unfair, but I just think his confidence will be at such a level now from that moment, because he's going to believe that he deserves to be there now. And he's had, obviously, Champions League man of the match. I know the game was a dead rubber, but he scored a wonderful goal as well. You know, he scored a couple of brilliant goals for this Manchester City side now. Obviously, varying in importance levels, but they're still brilliant goals. And I feel he's going to play now with even more freedom and more natural instinct, and with a trust behind him that he feels like he deserves to be there. And I do think it changes for him. I think that's changed now. I think Oscar was getting to that point where Pep looked at him as an option anyway, not just a guy who's there when we're 3-0 up. That just changed. That's it. If you win points, Guardiola points away at St. James's Park with the last minute, that's it. You are serious. You are absolutely serious. And it's like a new signing almost. I know that sounds cliche, but it almost is. Like the squad depth to me is better overnight. Just better.
It completely is. And I think that it comes down to numbers. I think that you often hear things like people will say, oh, well, anybody could score goals in this City team because look at the amount of chances that they create, stuff like that, right? Which is just kind of like, it's a little bit like City, you've got 2 players for every position. They're kind of myths that become facts over time because they get repeated so much. I think what Grealish said, I think he did an interview with Ben Foster for Amazon a month or so ago, right? And he talks about how he's really honest, and he goes, when I first moved to City, I was texting a mate of mine at Villa, and I was saying, imagine the goals and assists that I'm going to get in this team. And then he said, when I started playing games, it was like completely different, because you're playing, every team you play against is really low block. You've constantly
really
got
focused.
2 or 3 men on you. Yeah, like it's really hard to play in this City team because opposition defenses make it really hard. So to get numbers in this City team, it's not easy.
No.
Particularly from those wide areas, particularly if you're playing right wing or left wing for City, to get numbers consistently, it's a really difficult thing to do. Now, what Oscar Bobb is doing is getting numbers. Every time he gets on the pitch, there's a goal or an assist in there. And at some point, even the coaching staff, they're going to start extrapolating that outwards and going, well, Burnley at home in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. And I'm not saying it'll happen, but eventually those are the games, Burnley at home, where somebody's going to go, let him play.
No, I agree.
Start him, let him play. That's what they did with Phil. Eventually, there were games where they went, go on then, let him play. And every time Phil started a game, especially in those early days, he'd get a goal. Every time he'd get a goal.
Yeah.
Just to pop up with a goal out of nowhere. And I think that if you've got players who have that smell, that instinct in and around the penalty area, you want them on the pitch.
Yeah.
Goals win football games. Do you know what I mean?
And
fundamentally, goals win games.
As you said, like it's harder playing for City. I mean, people think it's easy, but it isn't. There's a reason only a certain caliber of player can stand out at Manchester City Football Club. I mean, Calvin Phillips was England's International Player of the Year, and he's a very respected England international, so on, and Premier League player, and he can't play for City at this level. He simply can't, because the expectation of what he's meant to do is just too much, and there is no shame in falling short of that. Because I think people think it's easy to play for City. It's not. It's harder. Everyone plays at their best. Every game you're more focused if you play against City, because you have to be. Like nothing heightens your senses than playing against Phil Foden, Haaland, De Bruyne. You are aware, because you can't be lazy, because you can't switch off. But you can switch off if you're playing, I don't know, if you're playing Forest a little bit, because you're probably not going to get punished in the way that you would if you against Man City. It's a simple matter of fact. Oops. Sorry, I've removed Ahsan there for the video briefly. Sorry about that, Ahsan. Super chat from Danny, by the way, who says, Oscar Bobb, a cross between David Silva and Leroy Sané. Tight control and awareness of Silva, but lightning quick and clinical in front of goal like Sané. World class. World class already is a big statement, Danny, but I mean, he's a world class prospect, absolutely. And I think it's hard not to see the similarities between those two players and so on. Danny, you're right, he's a special talent. And I've seen enough already to know that this guy is. If he wants it now, he's there. I don't see any.
I said it. I made that comparison in the summer.
Yeah.
On one of the Night 320 pods, I said that for me, he reminded me of a hybrid of Leroy and David Silva. And it's like it's a mad shout, but if you look at what he does for that goal, right?
This David Silva,
like I said,
is the pass against Huddersfield, isn't it? The pass to Foden to Alvarez. That's David Silva. It's even the exact same spot as well, in the inside left in the corner of the area. And the left foot, that's a David Silva pass, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the control that he has at the weekend to basically get that ball down, and then the awareness, the level of technique it takes to do what he did cannot be overstated. Phil Foden, our squad, could do it. Bernardo Silva could probably do it. There isn't anybody else in our squad who I think can do that.
Isn't it? The speed of the footwork. It's very Riyad Mahrez as well, isn't it? A little bit of Riyad.
Riyad could do that all day long. I felt in the summer when they let Palmer go that it was like a moment where it was like, you know what, Oscar Bobb's got a big chance here, because he did so well last year in the EDS. I know how highly rated he was a year ago. I know how much people had spoken about him. So it was always a question of if and when he gets on the pitch this season, can he make an impact? And he's made it.
Speaking of impacts, where's your highlight in terms of, obviously put the transfers in the title of this video? Looking forward, we're not going to do anything now. I don't think Confident's going to leave at this point. Maybe a last minute at the end of the window. But looking forward to the summer, what are you expecting now? Because obviously, what are you expecting to happen in the summer? Are you expecting a busy one? I think Ornstein said he's expecting a reasonably busy Manchester City summer. I don't know what that looks like compared to what some people think it is. I think a couple of signings maybe at most, but I don't know. Where's your head at?
I think that they'll sign a centre midfield player and a right winger. And I think that everything else will depend upon if somebody goes. Yeah. So I think that whatever they try to do with Bellingham, Rice, Paquetá, I think they'll pick that up in the summer and they'll go and they'll sign a centre midfield player. It's pretty obvious that they want a right winger, because Ornstein loads of times now. Yeah. And I think that if you tie that into Phil's performances when he's played centrally, I think it sort of makes sense that they go, all right, we'll go and we'll get a right winger.
It's the Bernardo situation as well, potentially hanging over.
Well, that's why I say that everything else will depend upon what. I don't think Bernardo Silva will go anywhere this summer, because I think that I don't think you can I think they've learned a lesson, or I hope they've learned a lesson. And the lesson that they've learned is you let Mahrez and Gundo go, right? And you don't get the succession spot on, you're going to have problems. And we've had problems. We can't dispute the fact that we've struggled to control games. We've struggled to control certain situations. Kovacic is a different type of player to Gundo. He can maybe do some things Gundo can't do, but then Gundo brought things to the table that were fundamental to why City was so strong last season. Yeah. So I don't think they let Bernardo go. I think they take the point of view that you can go on a free. Like, he signed his contract extension. He's got a release clause. I don't think anybody's paying it.
Yeah,
So
that's where I'm at right now.
falls.
I think people are pretty broke, and I think what we're going to see is people coming in offering under release clause by 15, 20 million. So you go, just catch
No, I think look. So one of the funny things is, right? So you've got these PSR rules, right? And the PSR rules, they've got everybody in a little bit of a headlock, except for City, because under the PSR rules, when you sell an academy player, it's all booked as profit. So when you buy a player, you get to divide the cost of that player over the length of their contract, even for PSR rules. When you sell a player, you get to book however much you can of that player, depending on whether you bought.
Doing, isn't it? With the CFG stuff and the CFA stuff.
So what's happened now is that City are in an insane position of power where they can look at the Calvin Phillips situation and go, nah, we're not doing you a favor. We want a guaranteed sale in the summer, and we want 7 million quid as a loan fee now. And if somebody isn't paying that, bye, see you later. You can sit on the bench. And I think that's spot on. I don't think we shouldn't be doing favors to other Premier League clubs, and we shouldn't be doing favors to players who got given the opportunity to leave in the summer, got told, listen, you're not going to play much football. You've got a chance here. We got an offer. We will accept it if you want to speak to that.
It's paid very well to sit on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't feel sorry for Calvin Phillips either. I agree. I think the City very. Like, sorry for him in a slight, nice, human way, but not sorry for him in a professional way. He's absolutely fine. Like he's got a very nice life. His family are local still. Like, he's absolutely fine. And I do think City. I think it's pretty much confirmed in all but words that City spelled it out to him in the summer that you're gonna have to go if you want to play football. And
definitely,
it's he could have easily caught in more interest, and his reputation would have been even higher than it is now. So someone would have paid for 40 million for Calvin Phillips. Someone would have 35 to 40. I think City would have accepted 35 to 40 million in the summer if someone came in. They just would have. I reckon in the end of the day, but that's the situation. Is I do think you're right. We're definitely going to sign a midfielder. Absolutely. I think the right wing as well. We've seen the links, haven't we, to Pedro Neto, which I think are realistic, by the way. I think City just like Portuguese players for very obvious reasons. They tend to do us pretty good.
There's the kid at Girona as well, Savio, who we kind of own because he's at Girona, who's doing really well. And I think I said yesterday that I think Savio feels like the most likely right winger because it's almost like if you bring him in, it's not like you're paying, so for example, I think it would be complicated to go and spend 70 million on Michael Elise, right? Yeah. Because if you pay 60, 70 million for Michael Elise, that lad's going to expect to play a lot of football. Yeah. And because he's English, there's going to be a lot of pressure to play him as much as he can. Whereas I think a kid like Savio, you can bring him in and you can say, you know what, you and Oscar Bobb can fight for this spot, and you've got an even chance, the pair of you, of claiming the shirt. And I think that to me, because of Bobb's emergence, that to me feels like a smarter move, certainly for next season, than going massive and signing like a Pedro Neto or an Elise, or basically signing a lad where you're going to have to play him because
he's
of the amount
French,
of money
by the way, Elise. He's actually French. He plays for France for the youth levels. But you're right.
Oh, that's right. He does, doesn't he?
You're right, though, in terms of absolutely. You're right in terms of the he is actually London-born. I remember reading about this. He's London-born, but he is represents France at youth level. But you're right in terms of the reputation, by the way. He's not for what it's worth. He's not fully declared for either country yet because he hasn't played for he hasn't got a cap for France or England, so he still could play for either. But their expectation would be there. And the thing about Savio as well, he can play on the left and the right. I do think we're going to see something like that. And there's the Gutierrez left back as well, isn't it, Girona? I think we're going to see a signing this summer. I think that's going to sort of surprise us. I think we're going to see the first CFG proper that's why they've done that. There's many potential. There's the left back. There's Couto as well, of course. There's Savio. We're going to see. There's even Alex Garcia. Maybe he could come back and be the DM that we've been waiting for an awful long time. You never know, But we're going to see something like that. Ahsan, mate, I can't go much longer because I've got to go look after Ruben because Nicholas very kindly took him 45 minutes off work for me to do this video, which is very sweet of my wonderful wife. But, mate, it's been a pleasure as always. What's your plans for today? Are you exciting them?
I'm doing a podcast with Howard and Steve later, and in between that, I've got 2 work calls with the producers in London about a TV show that I'm developing.
When are we going to see that? I can't wait.
Mate, you and me both. It's an unforgiving business,
I
but
know.
I'm pretty grateful just to be in it.
We'll see for something one day. I can't wait for it, mate. Ahsan, thank you so much, guys. Of course, go check out the 9320 pod if you haven't already. I'll put a link loads of times. It's in the description. I'm spamming the chat of it right now. Check it out. It's absolutely brilliant, essential listening from Manchester City fans. For now, though, have a wonderful day, everyone. Ahsan, you're a superstar as always. In a bit, mate. Bye-bye, guys.
Peace.
Cheers, man. All good. Right.